Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai, Gaur Pramanand Vivu. So good afternoon to all of you. Welcome. Pranam. I'm very happy to be all present today with all of you here, and thank you so much to the flute song Basis, the residents of the Venugit place, Venugita flute song, another word for flute song. So very auspicious realm that we are getting all together today to speak about some auspicious topic, which goes hand by hand with the call of the flute, if you will. We are, for those who are joining us today for the first time, we will do some brief recap of what we're speaking, and I know some of you may be joining our lecture for first time or second, third. I mean, we are students forever, so no problem. We are all learning everything. But as my Guru Maharaj used to say, sometimes some of these topics may be too high for some, too low for others at times. So bear with me and be patient. And if we can learn even the most smaller thing here, she wants to come in the online up. Come on, go that way. It will be the Zoom start. So whatever we can learn, even one single topic, one single point, that will make our meeting worthy. So at least be open to that. And if we don't understand many things, that's a good symptom as well, because that keeps us humble and open to learn. So today is our third meeting of a series of lectures we have chosen to share in connection to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and in particular section of the Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, 4th chapter, verses 63 to 68, where Bhagavan himself is expressing his indebtedness towards his devotees, how much he loves them, how much he even is controlled by them, the power of love that even makes God himself be in control. That's a very unique idea that generally we won't hear in other transcendental traditions. God being controlled, God being dependent, but in the context of something that makes him more of what he already is, if you will, as we were speaking these days. So today we are in our third meeting. We will be studying verse 65, but let me make some brief, or maybe not so brief, recap of what we were studying yesterday, for those who were not there, and for those who were there but were not there somehow or other. Or for those who were there and were there in every sense of the term. You can always relish this further. And so yesterday we were studying verse 64. Nahamadmana masase madbhaktair saduvir binashriyam chatyantiki brahma jasungati maham param. Bhagavan is saying to Durvas, to the Brahmavadi, at least in the Leela, who is cursing everyone and creating a very unique unfolding of different circumstances that are required for the divine pastime to grow and expand. So Bhagavan is saying, oh, best of Brahmanas, without my devotees, my saintly devotees, specifically Sadhuvir, Bhina, for whom I am the only goal of life, I do not desire to enjoy my own transcendental bliss, nor my supreme opulences. So all that basically defines who Bhagavan is. Bhagavan himself is saying, I do not care too much about that if I don't have my devotees, if I don't have someone to love, if you will, someone to express. Ekobahu Sham, sometimes the Vedas say, the one became many for the purpose of loving interaction. God is one and everything is God from the Aveda perspective, from the non-dual perspective, everything is God because God and his energies somehow or other are inseparable. But there's also the bad side to the equation where there is diversity, and we Gaudiyas tend to emphasize this idea of diversity because diversity allows for loving interaction. I mean, if we are all one thing, there's nothing apart from that one thing, there's no one else to relate to. So at least for us, that makes for a not so exciting prospect, if you will. At least in the context of love, that requires two, at least to begin with. Hopefully, it's something universal. It's not limited to people, but we find this in the dyad of Radha and Krishna. So, so basically, in this verse that we saw yesterday, Bhagavan is saying, I do not care for my own great qualities that make me so famous around the world. Supreme opulence, supreme. The six opulences sometimes mentioned regarding Bhagavan. We can recall them.
Strength.
Supreme, full.
Full strength.
Full beauty.
Full strength, full beauty. Sorry?
Wealth.
Wealth, full wealth.
Full knowledge.
Full knowledge.
Renunciation.
Renunciation.
Fame.
Fame. Okay. So this makes Bhagavan Bhagavan. I mean, if you don't have this, you are not Bhagavan. So in this verse, Bhagavan is saying, I don't care about these things, basically, without my devotees. I don't care about being Bhagavan without my bhaktas, basically. Imagine. I renounce the whole post of being Bhagavan for the sake of my devotees. And today our Guru Maharaj was sharing that in one morning lecture. Bhagavan is, in his ultimate form as Krishna, he's even willing to break his vow for the sake of his devotees. He promised, I won't fight in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhishma said, let's try to upgrade his Bhagavanness. Let's make his vow, break his vow. He ended fighting to protect Arjuna. And so he break his vow, but for the sake of his devotee. To keep a higher vow, if you will. Nama Bhaktya Pranashyati, says Krishna in the Gita. My devotee never perishes. I will always protect my devotee. That's the topmost vow. As we say, Bhakta Vatsalya. Bhagavan is willing to retain his quality as lover of his devotees. And if he has to renounce all the other qualities, okay, no problem. But I won't renounce this one. So I may break all vows, but I will never break the vow of I'm indebted to my devotee. So also I recall how the other day it was not a lecture. It was a lecture I was hearing, not a live lecture, where my Guru Maharaj was describing famous verse about Srimati Radharani, Devi Krishna Mai Prakta, Radhika Paradevata, Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarva Kanti Sammohini Para. From the Tantra, which includes many names of Sri Radha. I'd say Sarva Lakshmi means supreme goddess of fortune, if you will. She's the topmost Lakshmi. All opulence, basically, Lakshmi is the goddess of opulence. Sarva means all. So all opulence is with her. And the explanation of that verse, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, she fully represents the six opulence of Krishna. So that's another interesting point, because Sri Radha is Bhakti Devi personified. So if Bhagavan has opulences, his Bhagavan is because Bhakti makes, actually. So another way of understanding that is, again, Sri Radha, Bhakti Devi is the source of Bhagavan's opulences. Without my bhaktas, he said here, I don't care for my opulence, because actually without my bhaktas, there's no opulence. Without bhakti, I'm not Bhagavan. We have something else. As sometimes it is said, if you take bhakti from Bhagavan and extract further and further bhakti till almost no bhakti remains, quote unquote, you will have Brahman. Indeterminate, absolute, but not qualified absolute. Bhagavan is the absolute qualified by bhakti. So bhakti is like validating or qualifying Bhagavan interesting in a particular way. So the devotees are increasing the pleasure of Krishna. Basically, he's saying this here. I will share some, in order to illustrate that, we share some excerpts from one article that was written some time ago regarding going beyond the Atmaram stage, Bhagavan known as being Atmaram or being self-satisfied. And on top of that, he's divinely dissatisfied. Dissatisfied is the word? Because love makes you full, but love makes you always want to be more full. That's the nature of love. So we share some words in the article. I don't want to repeat the whole article again. I will read the second part today, so that will be more than enough. But basically, we mentioned on one side, the Upanishads are saying God is complete, but beyond the Upanishad, we have the Bhagavatam, which will tell us another story that we are getting to know here. in Vrindavan especially, in Vaikuntha even, but what to speak of Vrindavan. So we share these analogies of the flute, of the mass and the energy of the Swarup Ananda and the Swarup Shakti Ananda. Bhagavan feels some inner bliss through his own inner potency inside of himself, but when that is implanted in the hearts of the devotees and takes the form of loving interaction, that provides him a higher level of joy. So today we will continue sorry, developing this idea of how Bhagavan is willing to forego his Atmaramata, his self-satisfaction, in order to pursue the divine dissatisfaction that love provides, that can always increase and it has no end forever. So today, in today's verse, we will further, Bhagavan will further describe why this is so, why the devotees are so dear to him, and why he's so much indebted to him. And basically, he will show how the devotees are sacrificing everything for him, basically. So let's hear the verse. Verse 65. It says like this. Yedaragara putrapta pranambitam imam param hitwamam sharanam yata katam tam styaktumam sahe. Bhagavan is saying to Durvas, remember, we are at the gates of Vaikuntha, almost, something like that. Durvas reached till there. Sudarshan waiting to receive instructions about what to do, returning to Ambarish's palace or go into Durvasa's neck. So, and Durvasa is falling at the feet of Bhagavan, Sri Vishnu, praying for mercy, protect me from the chakra. And Vishnu is trying to explain himself why he's not doing so, basically. While Ambarish is absorbed in prayer in the palace this time. So he's saying to Durvas, Bhagavan is saying, since my devotees have taken refuge in me, after renouncing all attachments to wife, house, children, relations, life, wealth, and even their own ultimate welfare in this world and the next, how can I give up such devotees at any time? So Bhagavan is trying to explain himself here, no? So he doesn't seem biased at the same time. Like Durva is saying, why you are expressing in such a way towards your devotees? Why so extremely? And he will say, because they are giving themselves to me so extremely. So I have to reciprocate accordingly. So he said, Ye dara gara putrapta, first line. So he starts first to list all the things that the devotees have renounced. And I want to qualify, of course, this point that the renouncing is to the attachment to the things. Here I'm finding very beautiful Vaishnava families here, so I don't want to create conflict in that, because that's not the point, basically. Bhakti is not about getting rid of affection, if you will, or people, or relationship, but to properly qualify them in the context of having Krishna in the center. So try to go to the gist of the idea. We say, yeah means those devotees of mine, who I'm speaking about, Dara, Agara, Putra, Apta. So Dara means wife, and you can extend that to the other side, husband. Agara means house. Putra means children, sons. Apta means relatives, society. Your family and extended, if you will, family of society. And if that's not enough, he says, Pranambitami mam param. Pranam means prana, their life. They're giving everything to me. They're giving up means they're giving up selfish attachment to that, but somehow or other, all that is being directed to me. So we spoke the other day. When we speak about give, we also speak about giving something. We also speak about giving up something. The word give may be applicable in those two directions. I give something to Krishna. I give myself to Krishna. In order to give myself to Krishna, I have to give up something so I can give myself to Krishna. You follow the idea? So it's like the anchor, you say, of the boat? Anchor, sorry. So you have to do something with that. If not the boat, you can do all the effort you want, but you have to do something on that side So something else happening on the other side. If you so in order to give something, you have to give up something. But that should be a joyful decision for sure. So pranam vitam imam param. Pranam means their pran, their life. They're being detached from their life. Again, what does it mean? They are committing suicide? Not at all. I mean, they are just surrendering their lives to me. Vitam means wealth. Sometimes it's harder to give up even wealth than one's own life. Some people lose their life because of wealth. So that means for them, wealth was most valuable than their life. I remember, like, I think last year, someone, I don't know, somewhere in some country won the lottery, and they have to ask for the millions of dollars with some, how do you call it, paper that has my number, ticket. So he was almost poor. So from one day to the other, he was millionaire. So he went from one extreme to the other, and he was happy, having extreme happiness. So the next day he had to pick the money, and he lost the ticket. So he committed suicide the next day. So you can see the anisthita, no? Like ups and downs. And this is the point. The person detached from his life because he couldn't be detached from the wealth. You can see sometimes he was detached from his life. Oh, that's a higher thing, not for everyone. Some people, wealth is their pran, if you will, not the pran in itself. So pranam vitam imam param. Imam means all these things. Param, even param means swarga in this case, or elevation to heavenly higher domains, planets, or even mukti. So here Bhagavan is covering the whole range, like let's say dharma, artha, kama, moksha, family, society, world, life, wealth, heavenly planets, and then he says hitva mam sharanam yatha. Hitva means giving up all these desires for their sake of those things in themselves, giving up those ambitions, that paraphernalia only for like converging in me, if you will. Hitva mam sharanam. So mam sharanam, does it sound to some verse? Other verse would say similar words. Sorry?
I don't know. Mama kam sharanam.
Yeah, why not? So Krishna there is saying, Mamekam sharanam raja. So surrender unto me alone. So here the same. Mam sharanam. To me, and sharanam means shelter, basically. Yata. Yata means taking shelter, having taken shelter in me alone. So having taken shelter in me, they have been detached. They have given up all the attachment to all the things. And the last line, basically, Bhagavan is saying, since they are living such a lifestyle, if you will, katam stam tyaktamutsahe. Katam means, in this case, how. How? Tam means they, such people, my devotees. Tyaktum comes from tyaktva, means to abandon, to give them up. They have given up all for me. So he says, katam stam tyaktum utsahe. Utsahe means, comes from utsaha, which means enthusiasm. So Krishna here is saying, Bhagavan Vishnu, how can I be enthusiastic in that way? In that way means to give them up. How can I feel enthusiasm about giving them up if they have given everything up for me? It's not possible, basically, it's the last line. I cannot even think about giving them up at any moment because they do not give me up at any moment, but they give everything up for my sake. So I give everything up for their sake, even my position as God. That's the topmost limit of divinity. If that's required, if the devotees of God give everything for his sake to the point of wanting to relate to him in a particular way, when he will be forgotten of his godhood, okay, he's willing to renounce his godhood, if you will, quote unquote, to reciprocate with them. No? So that's an interesting point. Again, Bhagavan Vishnu is not saying this in Vaikuntha, but there are hints here, like a trailer of what's coming in the next 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, which we'll find Krishna Lila in Vrindavan. So let's go to what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has to say in his Sarartha Darshini, his purport to this verse. Like you know, there is some dialogue in between. So Durvasa is speaking with Bhagavan, trying to understand why Bhagavan is not protecting him, Durvasa, and he's expressing so much love for his devotees, but Durvasa is feeling the heat of the Sudarshan right before, behind him. So Durvasa is asking to Bhagavan, you are affectionate to Brahmanas. No? Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Hitaya Cha. You are known as that. So you're affectionate to Brahmanas. Therefore, do not ignore me. I'm a Brahmana. So the previous ideas did not work for Durvasa. So I keep thinking, I'm Brahmana. There are some things said about Krishna in connection to the Brahmana. So I'm a Brahmana. Please be loving to me. So do not ignore me. I'm a Brahmana. So Bhagavan will say, that is true. You got a point there. On some level, as we will see, that's not all. So that is true. I cannot ignore you. You are a Brahmana. But how can I ignore the devotees? So he's establishing the hierarchy between being a Brahmin and being a Vaishnava. There's not the same thing. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there's a nice compilation of one lecture he called Brahmana and Vaishnava. Maybe you know this famous lecture. And he was invited. There was a big debate about the Brahmins wanted to establish their superiority about Vaishnavas. So he went, sent by Bhaktivinoda Thakur to represent the Vaishnavas, and he discoursed by chanting the glories of the Brahmanas. So all the Brahmanas were like, wow. They themselves did not know how much the Shastra was glorifying them. So they were like, wow, we didn't know we were so cool, so interesting. We didn't know all those shlokas that he's reciting. So they were like even more, they felt more upgraded. So Prabhupada is trying to say, but this is the beginning. Now comes the real thing. Now I will speak about what Shastra has to say about the Vaishnavas. So that was really on another level. So eventually the conclusion was to be a Vaishnava is higher than to be a Brahmin. So, so yes, on one level, Krishna loves the Brahmanas. On another level, he loves the devotees. There are different types of love, different types of affection, reciprocation, protection. So here Durvasa gets the point saying, please, I'm a Brahman, you have to protect me. Yes, but if I protect you, it means I am neglecting my devotee. And I especially protect my devotee. You follow? So if I have to choose between the two, Durvas, sorry, you are a Brahman. So he says, okay, that is true. I'm a protector of the Brahmanas, but how can I ignore the devotees? I will have to give them up automatically if I protect you who offended the devotee. You follow? If I protect someone who offends the devotee, by protecting the offender, I'm neglecting the devotee. And Bhagavan says, no way, I will do that. In another circumstance, I may protect the Brahman, but in this case, I have to choose between the two. I'll go for the Vaishnava. For my sake, and now he explains why I'm acting in such a way, for my sake. I mean, Bhagavan is not biased. He's saying, for my sake, the devotees have given up attachment to wife and children, objects of affection, difficult to give up. Again, he's saying attachment to them, not them necessarily. So that's a different thing. Sometimes for some of us may merge, but there are different things. What have you, after presenting the position of the devotees, they have given all this for me. Then he says to Durvasa, what have you, a Brahman, given up? Please tell me. You cannot say that Ambarish did not give up anything. Remember, Ambarish was world emperor. So he had everything. So he had given up everything. So we said the other day, it's easy to be detached if you have nothing. If by force of destiny you are a homeless person, I'm totally detached. Yes, by force of karma. You may like to be a millionaire and enjoy so many things, but you cannot. But if you have everything and still you get detached on top of that, that's real detachment. So Ambarish was this type of thing. And his detachment, of course, was a practical one, Yukta Vairagya. He was using everything. He was still a king. He didn't go to the forest. He didn't kick off his family, wife. He was there. But everything was merging into his service capacity, if you will. Everything and everyone. You cannot say that Ambarish did not give up anything. When you engaged the demon to kill him, he did not move a step, since he did not consider his body important. So he was not attached to his body. Ambarish was like, okay, you want to kill me? But you who pray to Brahma and Shiva for protection run all over the universe to protect your body. So you are an Atmaram with complete detachment. I don't know, but maybe, who knows? You say so. I know the true value of him and you. What else should I tell you? Such a fool. That's how Vishwanath depicts Bhagavan speaking to Durvas. So again, we shouldn't repeat the same thing and speak to Durvas in that way, but Bhagavan can do that in this particular situation. So he's trying to establish this idea. Ambarish, externally, he seemed like an enjoyer, a Visai, world emperor, you may say. I mean, he has everything. But from the devotional perspective, he was the topmost detached person because he was engaged in all the limbs of Naval Action Bhakti, everything engaged for the service of Bhagavan. And on the other side, Durvas, he seemed like a Tyagi, a Vairagi, someone totally detached. But when something was threatening his body, he started to run all over the universe, protect my body, protect my body, protect my body. And Ambarish, if his body was threatened, he just folded hands and said, okay, no problem. I surrender that my body to Bhagavan. Tanubam manor bir aham tavasmi, as we said the other day. Mind, words, and body, not mine. I surrender them to Bhagavan. As we said the other day, my body is not my body, especially we as sadhakas. We should not think this is my body. This is my sadhaka deha, my body of aspirant. Even now, even that is not correct. Because the sadhaka deha of the body of the practitioner is a gift given by Sri Guru in the moment of initiation. So it's a gift that can never belong to us. That's interesting. To receive a gift that is not yours. Generally in this world, someone gives a gift, it's mine. But in this case, we receive a gift that is it's not to be owned by us, but we are to be owned by the gift and by the giver of the gift and so on. So if this body is not mine, it's a gift given from above. How should I relate to that? That's an important thing. So in this nice verse, Bhagavan is again listing all these different things that are really difficult to renounce. Again, the attachment to those things. Attachment to a partner, my Guru Maharaj will say, that's the most extraordinary desire in this world, basically. Extraordinary in the sense that practically nobody can live without that. So again, it's not a sin in itself. I mean, you can do that properly, but even you can do it. I mean, in the name of Jukta Vairagya, we can abuse the term. I think that's one of the most abused terms in the whole history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Jukta Vairagya. You say, but Prabhu, this is, no, Jukta Vairagya, Jukta Vairagya. Everything for the service of Krishna, Yukta Vairagya. Yeah, that's ideal. And everything has the potential to be engaged in the service of Krishna. But how much we have the capacity to do so, that's another thing. Like we know when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was reading Rupa Goswami's 64 limbs of Bhakti, he was reading, one should not have many disciples. One should not open many temples. So one devotee say, but Guru Maharaj, you are doing exactly that. Someone say, you have thousands of disciples, so many mats. And he say, no, many temples, many disciples, many, the word many is a question of personal capacity. What's many for you is not many for the other. I mean, you fall. I mean, you can have one disciple and it's too much for you. I mean, it may be too much for you to be a disciple. What to speak of having disciples? And someone else may have thousands and hundreds and thousands of disciples like Narottam Das Thakur, and he seems okay. So what's many, what's not? So the point is we should be really sincere about how much we have the capacity to engage everything in the service of Krishna and not abuse this idea of Jukta Vairagya, which means proper renunciation, which everything is linked with proper sambandha. Verses Anasaktasha Visayam Yatartam Upayunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandham Vairagyam Jukta Vairagyam Uchyate. Jukta Vairagya is when you relate to everything, being aware of the connection that everything has with the center, with the divine. As much as you are able to establish that connection, you won't be entangled by any type of activities. As much as you don't have that capacity, you may lose sight of what's the real purpose of that tree, this sandal, Zoom, whatever. Everything can be abused or everything can be really blessing your life. No? So, So here, but there are again some extraordinary classical situation. The Bhagavan, Mahaprabhu himself in the Shikshastakam shows something similar when he is saying, Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitamba. Like he said, I don't care for followers, wealth, partnership, and knowledge, and mukti. Even mukti, imagine. Mukti means no longer suffering. I mean, you are relieved from the three gunas. As I always say, we may say, no, I don't care about mukti. We are for bhakti and prem bhakti. But who knows if mukti comes one day to your, knocks your door with folded hands and say, I offer you total relief from the influence of Maya. You want to have a test? This is an appetizer only. Well, we don't know because we have not received that experience. So we say, no, I don't care about mukti. But if you have a taste of mukti, I mean, if you are a devotee, for sure those samskaras won't take you in the direction of any type of mukti. What to speak of impersonal mukti, but we shouldn't be so much. My point is, we shouldn't be so much like falsely sure, like, oh, I don't care about that. If we don't have the experience of that, again, it's like saying I'm really detached and you're a homeless person. You don't have the experience of being a world emperor. Who knows if you are there? So here in this verse, basically what Bhagavan is saying, all the things that Ambarish Maharaj abandoned, basically the attachment to wealth, family. I mean, he had a family, he had wealth, he was a king, he had a palace, he had servants, he had all those things, but he was not attached. So that's the most difficult thing to do. You have all those things, but you are not attached. Basically, what the meaning of this is, his sense of being, his sense of self was that of a servitor. I mean, he was the emperor of the world, the king of the palace, but his own self, his own abhiman or self-consideration was, I'm a servant here. And he retained that sense of identity at every single moment. So that's not so easy. That's not so easy. Generally, we have the opposite, the aham mameti projection. This is mine, this belongs to me, this I control, and I am something in connection to that. I am something in connection to what belongs to me, to what I control. But if someone tells you you don't control anything or you don't own anything, so what remains of my identity? And nobody can live without an identity. You are thrown into neurosis. If I take all your sense of identity, it's like, let me be something, at least someone in this world. That's why our movement to spiritual identity has to be gradual, because if you really emphasize too much, you are not this temporary identity, but you are not yet fully situated in your real identity, you may go crazy because you need some sort of sense of identity to be functional in life. It's a gradual movement. So here again, when we hear Ambarish Maharaj or Bhagavan is saying detachment from all the things, we are implying attachment to all a series of things, because that's the only way. What else? Did he learn that verse? Not yet. Param drishya nivartante. Higher taste. That's the next one for tomorrow. Chapter 2 of the Gita, verse 69, I think. I will look. So basically Krishna says there, if you relish a higher taste, then you can live the lower one. If not, so whenever we hear in the Bhagavatam and speaking, the devotees gave up this, gave up that, means they embrace this, they embrace that. It's not possible to give up something if you are not embracing something more. Once Srila Prabhupada was asked that, he was said, oh, Krishna consciousness is the science of detachment. Someone asked, no, this is the science of attachment. So we are here to become attached. So when we speak about being detached, it's indirect speech, if you will. I mean, it's, if you catch the idea, he's speaking indirectly about getting attached in order to be detached. But detachment is not the goal in itself. It's just a byproduct. It's a byproduct. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayota Yanadyatyasi Vairagyam Yanam Chayadhaitam. Vairagyam means detachment, but interestingly in the Sanskrit etymology, Vairagya means Vairagya. Ragya comes from raga. Raga means attachment. And Bhai means a special type of. So Vairagya, we say detachment, but the etymology says it's a very special type of attachment, which of course will create detachment.
Wow.
But that will be like the secondary thing. Okay, yeah, some detachment will, but a special type of attachment first. So Ambarish Maharaj was such a person here. So in his Paramatma Sandarbha Jiva Goswami comments on this verse also, on this series of verses, and he said that from this verse on, I mean 3, 4, and 5 mainly, this is the third one, these verses will deny that Bhagavan is ungrateful, he says. In which sense? The devotees are giving everything to them, to him. He's not ungrateful. He fully reciprocates in kind. Fully reciprocates in kind. In other words, he properly reciprocates with the love of his devotees, of his bhaktas. So the verse says, Yedara Gara Putrapta. Also something important to mention here, although I already hammered on that, but and this comes from the purport of Srila Prabhupada. He's saying this, let me share some words. He says, sometimes a pure devotee may have a habit or attraction for wife, children, and home. Attraction in the sense of attachment. But at the same time, he wants to serve the Supreme Lord to the best of his ability. So, for such a devotee, the Lord makes a special arrangement to free him from attachment to wife, home, children, friends, and so on. Not to free him from wife, attached house, and friends, but to free him from attachment to them. Which doesn't mean you become less affectionate. Which doesn't mean you become more indifferent. No, never say like that. But you are becoming free from attachment to them. Attachment to them means seeing them in a particular, as objects, let's say. Sorry if I'm going too straight to the point, but generally, sometimes it's like that. It's an object. I'm empty. Oh, you are there to fulfill my void. Please come here, serve me. Oh, I feel a little bit more better now. Thank you. And all that sometimes translates as I love you. But generally it doesn't have too much with love, because each one is looking for being served by the other one. No? I'm empty. As we said the other day, no? We are empty, we'll find someone to fill our void. But the problem is that the other person who accepts that also is empty and is hoping, oh, you will fill my void. So please sign here, you sign here. No? And we call that love. But after some time we realize both of us remain empty yet. What's going on? So, and that's a whole different thing to when we see, as we mentioned the other day, also Radha and Krishna or the gopis, Rasa Leela joining together. It's not that they have some existential crisis and they need to become whole with each other. Both of them are full and they get together to celebrate their fullness. So that's another whole different thing. So, yeah, Bhagavan will do that work with his devotees. So when we hear those statements from scripture that say Bhagavan will, if you are sincere, he will free you from all attachment. I mean, don't be scared. It's not that, oh, he will burn my house to ashes. And I mean, if you require the treatment, okay, no problem. And you are ready to accept that, of course. He won't send you a test that will be too much for you and you will become a Buddhist or whatever, no, with all respect to any tradition. My point is, he knows how much you can accept his will at that moment. He will send some test accordingly. And if you feel I cannot pass this test, it's not because Bhagavan sent something too high. It's because you are not giving yourself fully, basically. You are having some extra coins in your pocket that you are not fully giving yourself to him. I always say that to the devotees. Sometimes they may be kind of, I don't know, discouraged or, and I ask, but are you giving yourself fully to the practice, to whatever? I mean, you are expecting something from the practice that's not coming, but my point is, are you giving yourself fully to that you are expecting something in return from? Or there is something else you are having in your pocket that you could be investing there and you are not doing that? And 108% of the replies are, yes, I have some extra coins there, basically. So those extra coins you have there are the ones that are making you not feel, are according to how much you have in your pocket, if you will, in the pocket, accordingly to that you feel that void because you are not giving yourself that much. And it's okay if you don't want to do that, but do not complain to the Bhagavan department of something like that. Something else is missing. They will say, the echo will come back to you. Something else is missing. Okay. So as much as we are not willing to leave material attachment, the more we won't be able to really approach Bhagavan. Janmaishwarya Sudasri Idamana Madapunam Nirvaihatya Rivatumbai Tuhama Kinchana Gochanam, says Kunti Devi. She says, Bhagavan is he who can be approached by those who are basically free from material attachment. Or the word is, as much, the more you get free from that, the more you can really walk in that direction. And again, this speaks about attachment to bhakti that will create detachment to many other things. So regarding family, of course, that is one main point here, a main point for all of us in our daily lives, at least most of us, or most of you maybe. I mean, I have family in another way, and that's the point that we are pointing here. The other day I was hearing one lecture from my Guru Maharaj. Actually, he was speaking on another topic, but he nicely connected to this. He was speaking about what Srila Rupa Goswami calls Suhrid Rati. So it goes high in the scale of rasa. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he's speaking about Suhrid Rati means the love of a friend. Because generally in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami will describe Krishna is the object of love. He's the perfect Vishaya Lambana, the perfect object for Bhakti Rasa in all relationships. But one may ask, okay, but what about the relationship between the devotees? Because we hear, okay, that devotee loves Krishna in Sakya Rasa, that devotee loves Krishna in Madhurya Rasa. But how each devotee love with each other? Because it's not that in Golok, we love Krishna, what about between yourself? We don't care about us, only for Krishna. That's not happening. No? I mean, there's a special type of. So that's called Suhrid Rati, which means the love of a friend. And on top of that, Rupa Goswami elaborates on his doctrine of Bhava Last Rati, which is another way of speaking about Manjari Bhava. I won't go in that direction. But the point is that my Guru Maharaj took that and connected that with the idea of family members. Because basically he said, devotees have love for one another, even ourselves in the stage of sadhakas. We have love and affection for one another. We are supposed to get attached to one another. So again, the whole discourse starts to take another form. We are again speaking about attachment and relationships. It seems like what's going on here, you know? But in such a way that will nourish our love for Krishna. That's the legal attachment. I mean, attachment is not a problem, basically. Again, it's a science of attachment what we are doing here. But for it to be a science, it has to be a proper center, if you will. And the center is Krishna. So attachment is not a problem. So in that way, let the husband be attached to his wife. Let the wife be attached to his husband. In the context of their marriage being for the purpose, ideally, of pursuing Krishna consciousness. I mean, if that's the purpose, as much as you get attached to each other, that will create a greater result. But again, this is not an excuse in the name of Yukta Vairagya or whatever. No, all this is for the center. As much as the center is a center, and there's no false center, no problem. And he quoted, interestingly, something in that connection, no? Because his point was husband and wife should be partners in the pursuit of transcendence, basically. They are husband and wife on one level, but on top of that, they are pursuing a common goal that is beyond themselves, basically, if you will. It's not a goal that is ourselves, but there's something that has to be above ourselves. If not, if the goal is just ourselves with each other, I mean, it won't last for long. But if we are able to establish a goal that is beyond all of us, above our heads, that will protect us constantly. So we are sadhakas, we are getting together, we need a partner emotionally in so many levels. Okay, no problem. Krishna's in the center, and marriage will be anukul, will be favorable. No, there's no problem. Whether you are in the forest or at home, that makes no difference. No problem. You can chant Hari. And he quoted something from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which was interesting as a point he wanted to make. No, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said in one, I think in Jaiva Dharma he was mentioning, and he said one should not get married for having children. He said there. I'm seeing the faces of some of you now. Because on the opposite, we generally hear, no, like the Dharma Shastra says, if you are not having children while married, that's useless. Why did you get to all together, and so on. Even the Dharma Shastra means the main purpose of marriage is prajas, which means, how do you say in English? Progeny. Progeny. Dharma and Rati also, to culture Dharma and Rati, affection. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a very bhakti idea beyond the Dharma Shastra, which is we should get married not for having, I mean, he's not saying don't have children. He's saying that's not the purpose of getting married. You can have children, no problem. But the real purpose of getting together is what? Okay, if you say so.
Serve each other.
In which context? Because everyone serves each other. Yeah, Krishna in the center. Yeah, what we were saying. So if you have children in that context, that's not a problem. But the point is, because sometimes we may get stuck in that idea. The purpose of marriage is to have children. Okay, there's not a problem with that, but go beyond. Now connect your children with Krishna, because if not, it's very cruel to our children, basically. I remember once I was speaking with one friend, with devotee in Argentina, and we were speaking about like trying to connect everything with the ultimate purpose. So he was telling me, well, but I'm working all day. So I say, well, why you are working all day? Well, to earn money. So we were going through the sequence of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, basically, in moksha. So I'm working all day for earning some money. And why do you want money? So he said, well, I need to maintain my family. And he kind of felt this is the ultimate converging point. But I said to him, and why are you maintaining your family? And he was like shocked with that question, because like he never like considered there is something more than that, basically. But he realized there is something more than that, which doesn't mean you are dismissing your family. Actually, that's the real concern for your family. You are connected that with the real family, the ultimate family. Vedas say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means there is no more than one family. If you start to think in terms of my family, you start to be sectarian. You start to be narrow-minded in terms of what's a family. So Vedas say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. There's only one family. So whatever family, so-called family you have, is for the purpose to understand, actually there is not my family, but there is only one. Universal, if you will. So yeah, the idea is marrying for the purpose of Krishna consciousness, and of course being a monastic for the same purpose. Now, of course, whatever I'm saying for the Grihastha ashram applies to any other ashram. Because there are ashrams. I mean, ashram means, the very word ashram means shelter. So whatever order you accept, it should be a shelter. And we are sheltered under the same umbrellas. We spoke the other day in Nityananda Triyodasi. His lotus feet are like the same umbrella for all of us. Maybe we are disciples of one guru, you are disciples of another guru, and they are representatives of Nityananda Prabhu. So each one of them are like one petal in the lotus feet of Nityananda. But we are all sheltered under the same lotus-like umbrella. It's not yeah, I'm in this petal, you are in this petal. We won't struggle because my petal is different from yours. Lotus petals shouldn't be a cause for great problems. Sometimes happens, struggling for lotus petals. But we should throw lotus petals to each other, but in the spirit of Puspanjali. No? Okay. So, of course, what Bhagavan is presenting here is a really interesting idea, because as we mentioned, on the very material level, as we were speaking about material attachment and going to the trying to make full circle, material level means I don't know, let's give an example, and I know this may be a hard pill to swallow, but sorry, this is my duty as a sannyasi to make you uncomfortable. I'm paid for that. I'm not even paid, but well, no problem. The payment is that people get angry with me eventually for saying some things. So when you say I love my children, for example, I may ask you why, and do you love every children of the world in the same way that you love your children? You may say no. And why? Maybe the answer is because they are my children. So you love more the person, or you love more the my? Because if I take the word my, it makes no difference. They are children. They are mine. And I say, but they're not yours. So, you follow my point? Again, I don't want to take you out of the comfort zone so much. A little bit is necessary, but so the point is, sometimes I love the person because I think it belongs to me, but I don't love the person in itself. I mean, with all respect, but you may have it, not necessarily children, anyone, but you may love the baby or whatever, but you don't still know the person in itself too much, maybe. You just feel a strong emotional connection by way of attachment generally. So it's my extended self there. But you get to know the person after some years, and sometimes when you get to know the person, maybe that initial love starts to take some other form. You have to struggle to, oh my God, the personality of the person starts to come. I have to tolerate, to deal with. And ideally, you should love the person more because you start to know the person in itself. So sometimes when you say, I love him, I love her, sometimes we only love the designation my. But we should, real love is, I'm interested in the person beyond he's my son, my wife, my nothing, my something. It's a person, devoid of upadis. Upadis are like limiting adjuncts, no designations. So that's on the, I'm saying all this because here Bhagavan appears to be speaking in similar terms about his devotees. But in order to fully understand that, first we have to get rid of the misunderstanding of material attachment. So, for example, we should love our children because of who they are, not because they are our children. I'm not. I'm. If I say I love you because only you are my child, I'm just saying I don't care about who you are. I just care that you belong to me. The person. It is not so romantic if you say that to someone. I only love you because you belong to me. You are mine. That's what I love in you. The other person says you don't know. You don't have an idea who I am yet. Of course, on another level, one may love, I don't know, God, for example. Let's take that to God. We love God, because he provides what I need. As we spoke these days, I'm empty, I needy. God provide, please. He provides. Thank you very much. Namaskar, some puja, some rupees there. Okay. Whenever I need something, I know the number where to call. He's the divine provider, if you will. So again, it's some sort, you say love, but you are more interested in being provided. You don't care so much about the person yet. You just know he's wealthy. Let's say he has what I need. So and he gives whenever you ask him. So thank you. So it's still a little bit of, let's call love in a generous way, basically. On another level, one can say, okay, let's go from Paramatma, which has to do with this type of function, to Bhagavan. But Bhagavan, Vishnu, Narayan, some may love them because he's God, as we were yesterday in the Venkateshwar temple. They love him. They serve him very nicely. But the main sense is he's Bhagavan. He's to be served. He's God. We love him, we serve him because he is God. He deserves that, if you will. But still they are not, it's a way of speaking about that. I'm not dismissing that. No? But they are not still loving God for who he is. But they are loving him because of the position he's having, the rank. He's God. He's the boss. Maybe they are not thinking about asking things from him. They are thinking about serving him. But because he's God, because he's the boss at the universal office, if you will. But not yet as a person, as the supreme personality of God, for this proper will call, as a family member, the intimacy of one's home. That happens in Braj. Again, this verse is not yet speaking about that, but it's pointing pointing to Braj. So in Braj is when we have this full circle, when everything starts to seem again like ordinary material life. Because in Braj, nobody's loving Krishna for Krishna being God, but they love Krishna because of how they feel towards him. Oh, he's my friend, I love him. There's again a sense of mindness, mamata. He's my friend. Just so to say, he's my son. Even if technically speaking, some may say Krishna may not be technically just the son, although for us God, yes, he is. But some may say he's Devaki's son. But just to say, I don't care, he's my son. I feel he's my son, so I go for that. So again, they love Krishna because of what they feel towards him. So again, it seems we are going back to the how it was happening in this world, but it's full circle, a prakrita. It seems ordinary, but it's super transcendental, extraordinary. So I'm extending a little bit, so bear with me. No problem. Fire is okay. Not for Goranga Priya. She has to be closer. No problem. I have a chatter if someone needs. I don't know, just in case. Oops. So, so also these days we were speaking about, again, towards such devotees that give themselves fully to him, as this verse is expressing, giving up everything for him, all attachment, and all the attachment actually is really condensed towards him. That's what we find ultimately in Braj. Here Bhagavan Vishnu is speaking, and there is some degree of attachment in Vaikuntha, but what we find in Braj is like overwhelming to Bhagavan himself. Again, his Bhagavanness is overwhelming. He forgets basically that he's God. So such a degree of attachment that takes him but to reciprocate, or let's say trying to reciprocate, but sometimes even failing to do so because he feels whatever I'm trying to give, this coming back to me, what's going on here, and so on. So yesterday we shared some words from one article called Beyond Atmaram that I had the opportunity to write some years ago. So with your permission, I will close today's lecture with the second part of that article, because there was the second part. So Beyond Atmaram part 2, basically. And let's explain how Bhagavan, and in this case, especially Swayam Bhagavan, Sri Krishna in Braj, he cannot but live to reciprocate the love of his devotees in the context of divine love, or as we mentioned, divine dissatisfaction. So, okay. So it says like this. So I will read as I did yesterday. It's okay, it was not too boring, just reading and reading and reading. I tried to explain something in between. In Gaudiya Vedanta, we worship an open secret. So from Vaikuntha, we're jumping into Gaudiya Vedanta because, again, for us, the ultimate implication of these verses is what's coming in the next canto, 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. In Gaudiya Vedanta, we worship an open secret. We worship a God who is weak and perfectly flawed, who is constantly defeated by the strength of the affection around him. At the hands of his most intimate servants, Bhagavan is won over every single day, in every possible way. Tied by Yashoda Mai, defeated in wrestling by Sridham, and scolded by Radha and her Sakis. We worship a weak God because we worship love above God, as he himself does. This is a very special type of love, and thus a very special type of God. So you can tell how special is God according to how special is the love that is defining him, as we say yesterday. There are different phases of the Absolute, and each one of those phases are defined by a particular type of bhakti contacting him. The essence of God is then not his status as God, but his capacity and disposition to transcend himself in divine love and eventually become Sri Krishna. As we say, Krishna is God beyond God. He retains his godhood but becomes something more in eternal time, not as a single point. Prem implies not only an eternal being, but an eternal becoming as well. Sri Braja Krishna clearly exhibits such dynamism. The God designation is discarded, while Swarup Shaktiananda is there to facilitate this level of transcendence in his own life. When the all-attractive becomes supremely attracted by his own form, it being somehow reflected here and there, famous example, Krishna seeing himself in a pillar or whatever, at a point beyond time, that Rupa Madhurya or sweetness of his form is a direct consequence of a particular type of prem, striking Bhagavan in a specific way. Thus, he's carving a very specific form of himself which is the result of the love he has received. Sorry if I become too poetic in some moment, but we cannot but do so while speaking about these topics. For example, as we mentioned yesterday, Sri Krishna pretends to show his Chaturbhuj form in front of Radha, only to find two of those four arms shrinking into nothingness in the face of her divine love. Dvibhuj. My Guru Maharaj will say, our God Krishna, he has no weapons, he has no extra arms, he has only one head, because he looks very limited, but because of the power of the prem that makes him act in such a particular way. In Lila, he's absorbed in Lila. Lila is a very crucial word for us, and lots to unpack there, but Lila means basically play. So, and play, somehow or other, we could say, is when you play, if I say to you, okay, now let's play whatever, that we are like animals, and you are a serpent, and you are a whatever, and this, and giraffe. So it's a pretense. Pretense, you say? Like you're pretending something. So Krishna pretends it so well in Lila, in his play, that he forgets that he's playing, basically, as we mentioned. That he forgets his own godhood. My Guru Maharaj will say he plays really hard, to the point that he gets so absorbed in the play that it's no longer a play, it becomes reality. For us, it's reality. It's not that we enter Golok and, oh, we know this, he's playing, this is a lie, this is not real. No, everyone is playing really hard there. I mean, that to the point that it's reality and something else becomes the play, if you will. So Krishna forgets his own godhood and believes his own play, basically. So Lila means that place where self-sacrifice, we say, reach the peaks of self-forgetfulness. In Vrindavan, there's self-forgetfulness. Krishna is self-forgetful of who he is as God, basically. And the devotees are self-forgetful of themselves in divine love. So that's a good point to make. Both for God and the devotees in Braj, there's self-forgetfulness, which is higher than self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice is, I am still aware, I'm doing this for him. Self-forgetfulness is just like, the flute song is there. I'm not thinking I have to sacrifice this in order to go there. I'm just going there. Full identify with the call, the clarion call. So now we will go to the Atmaram. We'll share a particular interpretation of the Atmaram verse in this connection. Even though Sri Hari is generally known as Atmaram, for and by himself, by his very nature and that of his Swarup Shakti, he becomes what Thakur Bhaktivinoda will call Pararam. So Atmaram means?
Self-satisfied.
And Pararam means? Divinely dissatisfied. So something above Atmaram, basically. So Pararam means supremely dissatisfied in the context of self-satisfaction. So Pararam includes Atmaram, but it's an upgrading of that. This brings Bhagavan to the point of a new inconceivable equation. The bigger the dissatisfaction, the greater the Ananda, which may seem contradictory. In this world, is the bigger the dissatisfaction, the less the Ananda. But in Swarup Shakti context, it happens the opposite, because it's another type of dissatisfaction. In this consideration, even the Atmaram stage, also present in self-satisfied sages, is something to be transcended in pursuit of a higher taste. So interestingly, here we have Bhagavan and Durvas. So the two of them are considered Atmaram in their own situation. Bhagavan, Vishnu, Narayan in Vaikuntha is Atmaram, self-satisfied. And Durvas is also considered as an Atmaram sage. But in the context of this conversation, the two of them are transcending the Atmaram stage in their own situation. Durvas by receiving a higher glimpse of Bhakti, and the same we could say for Bhagavan. Higher and higher glimpses of Bhakti. So even the Atmaram stage in this consideration is something to be transcended in pursuit of a higher taste, as the Bhagavat mentions is his famous Atmaram verse. This is another well-known verse from the Bhagavatam. I will say this is the verse that Mahaprabhu explained the most. So we can Recite the verse. It says, Atmaramas chamunayo nirgranta pirukrame kurbantya haitu kim bhaktim itambuta agunohari. First Canto 7th chapter 10th verse. So basically here it says of all varieties of Atmarams or self-satisfied sages. I mean, it says Atmaramas chamunayo. Atmaram is self-satisfied and munis, munayo, sages. Nirgranta pirukrame. They are nigranta. They are free from all knots, from all entanglement. But they feel attraction. It's a itabuta gunohari. Due to the all attractive qualities of Hari, even though they have no attraction for anything, they are attracted to him. That's basically the idea. And that's why, because Hari possesses incredible qualities that makes even the self-satisfied sages attracted to him. So this is important, very important verse of the Bhagavatam that established the glory of Bhakti. The main example of an Atmaram in this context was Sukadeva Goswami, that who was so detached that he did not even care wearing loincloth, basically. He was not even attached to a coping. So you can see that's detachment also. I mean, he was not even aware if there was coping or not. I mean, he was not aware of his body. He was just Atmaram. But this Atmaram Sukadev, when Vyasadeva sent the woodcutters to the forest to recite some Bhagavat verses, Sukadev came like hypnotized, like behind that sound. So the point is, Bhakti had a higher power of influence on him, who was an Atmaram, who was finding pleasure in himself. He tasted a higher taste, if you will. So this most important sloka was explained by Mahaprabhu in 18 different ways to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So that's the first session where Mahaprabhu explained the Atmaram verse in 18 different ways, which is already something. And in 61 different ways to Sanatana Goswami, if that's not enough. After that, Sanatana Goswami said, I heard you explain the Atmaram sloka to Sarvabhauma. Can you explain it again? Okay, why not? Let's go to 61 more. But I won't touch the 18 previous explanations. Let's go to some new ones. So he gave 61 just in case. Indeed, there is no other verse that Sri Gauranga had glossed so much during his Leela. And there is good reason for that. It powerfully teaches how an Atmaram, Sukadeva Goswami being the prime example in the Bhagavat, will leave behind not only every material attachment, but even his self-satisfied state, his Atmaramata, attracted by Hari's unmatched attributes in the context of Bhakti. So that's what this verse is speaking about, how the devotees are leaving all for the sake of Bhagavan, even Mukti. Sukadeva's example. In other words, the Bhagavat's Atmaram Mahabhakya, or great dictum, represents its main praman, or evidence, regarding the superiority of devotion over Gyan, Prem above Mukti. That said, being that Atmaram is also another name for Krishna, this verse will ultimately apply to him as well, and it should. So now comes some attempt to explain this Atmarama verse in relation to Krishna, not necessarily to Atmaram sages, which has some theological implications and consequences. We'll see. Being properly turned, the Bhagavat perpetually reveals secret meanings in its eternal pages, just as grinding, the green leaves of henna, you say, gradually manifests its reddish content within. No? So in order to find the redness, you have to do some grinding. In order to find some extra revelation in the Bhagavatam, you have to churn it also. Therefore, our inspiration for any noble insight must be properly grounded in scripture and blessed by our Purvacharyas. In this regard, we receive a unique hint in the first verse of Rasa Panchadhyaya, Rasa Lila section, which says that although Sri Krishna is Bhagavan, he made up his mind to enjoy with the gopis. In other words, he's self-satisfied, but he wanted to enjoy, which seems again contradictory. If you are self-satisfied, why you want to enjoy? Which type of enjoyment that is? So commenting on this shloka, Srila Jiva Goswami mentions, Bhagavan here refers to Krishna being Atmaram and Aptakam, full satisfied, all desires satisfied. Although he desired to enjoy anyway, on the ground of such self-satisfaction. Just as Atmarams, although fully satisfied, perform bhakti to Krishna, in the same way, Krishna himself, although being Bhagavan and thus fully satisfied, yet desired to enjoy with the gopis. So, in the same way that Atmaram sages become something more by contacting Bhakti and Bhagavan, Atmaram Sri Krishna also becomes something more by being in touch with those attributes he possesses that are actually the result of interacting with his own Swarup Shakti. This interaction creates such astounding features within it that God himself feels incomplete before such a scenario. In other words, when Rasaraj Sri Krishna witnesses the ultimate zenith of Mahabhav, Sri Radha, he's thrown into a totally new situation when he realizes that there is something in him that makes Radha the way she is, thus developing a particular void in himself and a consequent desire to taste such an experience. Hence, there will be only one possible solution to such a dilemma, the form of Sri Chaitanya. Then we enter the converging point of this explanation. Mahaprabhu is that same person who presented the Atmaram verse in so many different ways, except for one missing, quote unquote missing, explanation. He never considered exposing himself in the lines of such sloka. In his natural humility and due to the depth of his descent, Sri Gaur Krishna tried to avoid this. But the actual duty of every devotee is to lovingly expose his own Istadev, worshipable deity, for the pleasure of his servants. So here we go, attempting to point to the Golden Lord, the natural evolution of Krishna's divine dissatisfaction, as well as the subsequent lila that manifests in order to solve such a riddle, all of which has been loudly proclaimed in the pages of the Bhagavat, especially in the Atmaram verse. You bear with me for a minute?
Please.
Okay. So, as previously mentioned, the word Atmaram can refer in this verse to whom?
Krishna.
Yes. Who takes pleasure in himself. Also, Atmaramascha Munayo. The word Munayo means thinker, Muni, applies naturally to him, as well as the word Nirgranta, or that person who is beyond all bondage and or standard statements of scripture. He's beyond that. So we are trying to explain that verse in context of Krishna. That said, he lives such a privileged state by becoming attracted to his own wonderful qualities, Itam Bhuta Guno Hari, and by pursuing his desire to experience Bhakta Bhava. Thus, he engages in unalloyed bhakti to himself, Kurbanti Haitu Kim Bhaktim, such as when Radha Thakurani worships his beloved Urukrama, which is the name of Krishna in the Atmaram verse, the great adventurer, means Urukrama. But how can Sri Krishna engage in bhakti to Sri Krishna? By considering the Abhed perspective of our Abhed equation, Krishna's Swarup Shakti is actually one with him. And in that sense, this particular rendering can be possible when Sri Krishna adopts the mood and luster of his Parashakti, appearing as Sri Gaur Krishna. This is what we know as Gaur Lila, or that moment in eternity where Sri Krishna doubts his own status due to the powerful experience of Sri Radha, and thus, transcendentally dissatisfied, he proceeds to go after her Bhava, having had a glimpse of the supreme form of Swarup Shaktinanda he could never possibly conceive of. Gaur Krishna thus represents the culmination of divine dissatisfaction, simultaneously embodying the most fragile and yet volcanic face of the Absolute. While Sri Braj Krishna may be considered the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sriman Mahaprabhu will indeed be regarded as the Supreme Personality of Krishna. So we can extend that idea. Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mahaprabhu is Supreme Personality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, this Gaur Lila teaches us a most valuable lesson. Our most empowered prospect lies in the land of vulnerability, starting with Krishna himself in the form of Mahaprabhu. And that's our open secret. That's the God we worship. We say that in the beginning of this article. So one last paragraph to close says, speaking about his own vulnerability and what brought him here to solve his dilemma, maybe this is the reason why Mahaprabhu chose to explain the Atmaram verse so many times, thus extolling the virtues of divine dissatisfaction and its ultimate reach in the form of his own dispensation. So even though we should hide our Istadev in the innermost chamber of our heart, at the same time we should qualify ourselves for properly exposing him in a pleasing way. Rai Ramananda did just that at the end of his Samvad with Gaur, his conversation with Mahaprabhu, to the point that Gaur himself had to shut his mouth since he was saying too much. Also, Mahaprabhu had said to Sanatan that only by his association was he inspired to speak so many meanings of the Atmaram verse. And he concluded that if one becomes a madman like me, he may also understand the meaning of the Bhagavat, as I did. In this way, may Sri Guru and Gauranga bless us all so that one day we may acquire the required madness for truly understanding the Bhagavat, sincerely hoping that Sri Satchinandan may someday shut our mouth and throw us into his Nitya Lila, our land of no return. Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanand. So, sorry for such long reading, but we wanted to share some ideas in connection to this verse. I hope that helped. And if we have some extra minutes, I will ask if there are any questions before finishing today for you present here or whoever is connected here in online as well. We have some devotees. So, I don't know, any questions? Gopal Nandin?
So I've heard Guru Maharaj say before, sometimes like don't worry about the negative things, you just add the positive, and then those negative things will fall away. Is that kind of the same with the attachment and the detachment? Because it seems like sometimes we might be frustrated that we're still attached to things, or unable to be as detached as we would like. And is it really like forget about being detached and just like point our attachment in the right direction, and then the detachment will come and the wrong attachment will leave by instead focusing on that right attachment?
Yeah, I would say that will be the main emphasis, but of course also for moments at least it may help to, I mean, we are speaking about the same thing from two different sides when we say attachment, detachment, or accept the favorable, reject the unfavorable. And we find so many descriptions in scripture about what to do, but also what not to do. And sometimes it may help, but may work better for us, depending on our case or our stage, that first we are being told what not to do sometimes. Sometimes to your children, you say what not to do, and maybe then they learn what to do or whatever. But no, Krishna starts the Gita in the second chapter saying to Krishna, what the soul is not. It's not burned, it's not killed, it's not this, it's not. And the other say, Ashtariabhat, Ashtariabhat, Ashtariabhat. He said, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. Something positive to be said. But yes, I agree that mainly our focus should be how to increase the positive culture of my devotional culture, and detachment will follow. But sometimes again, that attachment to bhakti will be, because we are accustomed to be attached in the material world. I mean, so if I very easily and quickly start to speak to you about getting attached, we may not have a proper idea of this type of attachment, because it's easy to say, yeah, now move all your attachment to this to Krishna. And okay, but what does it imply? How to do that? So in order to qualify that description, I will tell you, it implies detachment of this. So then you understand, okay, that should be attachment to Krishna. Because if not, I can cheat myself thinking, I am attached to Krishna, I moved all the attachment in that direction. But you may realize, oh, but I realize I'm attached to all the things at the same time yet. So he's attached, or she. But I agree that our path is mostly a positive path. So, but again, we have, I don't know, offenses to avoid in our chanting, offenses to avoid in worshiping the deity, offenses to avoid visiting the dham. And indirectly, they are telling us what to do. Again, so if we have the capacity of connecting one thing with the other, we should develop it. That will help. So sometimes it may help to know how not to do certain things. And the complementary part, again, we need both approaches. You know? Like also when it is said, how is this? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. How does the verse starts? Oh. Ah. Okay, getting old. What to do? Okay. Yeah. Okay, but you know the verse. He's saying, always remember Vishnu, never forget him. So you say, but I mean, it's enough to say one of the two. It's okay. Smarta vyasatam Vishnu vismarta vyanajatu chit. So always remember him, never forget him. And you may say, it's enough, always forget him. Everything is included there. You may misapprehend the idea. So let's qualify it further. Never forget him. That means always remember him. And you may hear that, say, oh yes, now it helps more. It makes more sense. So sometimes we need the two sides of the coin, if you will. So there's no problem. But we should be careful, of course, not to overemphasize the negative, quote unquote negative, the don'ts, because we may end up with, we are coming, most of us, to bhakti with maybe some scarf or karma or gyan. I mean, like material attachment or material detachment. And if we get too much into any of those extremes, we may not be qualified for engaging in bhakti. That's what the Bhagavatam says. If you want to take perfection of bhakti, you cannot be too attached to much, and you cannot be too detached. Because if you are too attached, you will be qualified for karma. If you are too detached, you are qualified for gyan. If you are not too attached, not too detached, you are qualified for bhakti. So middle path, as we mentioned. Okay, something else?
So Maharaj, your point about loving everyone, or do we love others just because they're my child or my husband? But it seems like it's meant to be that way because like the mother, when she becomes pregnant and birth, she has all these hormones to make that attachment very strong, so that child will be very much nurtured. And of course, we do know philosophically that we should love everyone, and that's why, like, sannyasi broadens their love base. But we know philosophically, and at the same time, we realize our capacity. Our capacity is small. Like, we may expand, just like here. It's a very tight community, and all these children grew up together. So they're very much close and related, and each of the mothers, they love their friends' children very much as well. But to expand it more and more, and then as far as we realize later, like I guess I love some of my sons more than my biological son. Other devotee sons.
Mm-hmm.
I even feel more affection
Mm-hmm.
and love for them as they grow up. And so just like that, if you could maybe expand on that, how to broaden our love base, you should say.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, when we say love, there are so many ways to speak about that. It's such as my Guru Maharaj will say, that's the most maybe used term on earth and the less understood, along with words like I. We use that word so much, but we'll understand that so little. I, love. So of course, we may speak about love in a more universal sense. We love each other in the same way, but also at the same time, I don't know, if we go for a minute, to the Lila, to Vrindavan, I mean, there are different types of love, if you will. It's not the same love. There are different degrees of love, but in a particular context, not in the context that I love you more and I love you less because of material attachment, but because of another type of nuanced thing. So, of course, what you say was totally in place, and there is no, and I think the main point you made was like, we are small. it's okay, because if we of course try to force our way into universal love in a way that is really superficial for our smallness, we may end up dysfunctional, trying to be universal, and in that universality you end up being neglectful as a parent, or whatever. I don't know, so many things can happen. And of course, if you're a mother or father, you should love your children, of course. That, but again, the point is, what does it mean to love my children? So many layers of possibilities. Do I love them because they are my children? Of course, they are my children in this life. They are under my care, and I have to take responsibility. I mean, it's logical. It's not that. Do you follow? It's not. I cannot take care of all the children of the planet Earth. I have to take care of the one I have, and that's more than enough. So that's, for some reason, that person came to your life, but all that you should be taken in the context of Vaishnavism, basically. My wife is a Vaishnavi, my children are Vaishnavas, and all of them are there to make me develop a sense of being a servant. As we were speaking the other day with, can I share, Madan Gopal, what you share with me? Yeah, why not? No private life. So one may think, we were speaking, one may think, okay, I don't know, I'm a monastic for a while, and I may think, oh, I'm and as a monastic, I'm serving in the temple and serving the devotees and serving the sannyasi and serving my guru. At one point, I feel I want a little bit more of independence now. So I will go out of the monastic stage and I will have a family, so I can have more my time, my life. And as much as you get closer to that situation, you realize that's not happening. That's taking another form. And I'm becoming a servant of my wife, of my children, which is not a problem. I'm not saying that's wrong. The point is, that's confirming you are to be a servant, basically. Now, if you're not able, we were not fully able to grasp that as a monastic, no problem. You go, you get married, and you will have another chance to grasp the same thing. You are a servant. And of course, not only the husband is the servant, the wife is the servant, the child, I mean, everyone is. It's not just an excuse. Yes, you have to be a servant, of course. That's what Shastra says, serve me. So the spiritual world, that's the point. In the spiritual world, everything, Srila Sri Maharaj once said that beautifully, and of course that was scary for one's ego. Say, to enter into the spiritual world means you enter into a place where everyone is to be served by you. No, sorry, you are to serve everyone. Sorry, I inverted the whole idea. So edit the audio later. So you are there to serve everyone. Nobody's there to serve you. Of course, the point is that everyone else is thinking in the same way. I'm to serve everyone, but you are not calculating that. You are not saying, okay, I'm going for serving everyone, but actually I know that all of them will be thinking the same. So someone will be serving me. There's no calculation there. There's no Maya. Maya means calculation. So that calculation is not there. So, but I think we should, on that basis, okay, we are small, but we can become bigger also. So that's the challenge. To grow spiritually means to have a bigger heart. Once my Guru Maharaj was with another sannyasi that they were meeting, and they were friends for like 20 years. So the two were given a lecture in Vrindavan. I was there. So 2007. So he was saying, I know him for 20 years, and 20 years back, he was really thin, he said. Now the sannyasi was expanded, physically speaking. And he said, but after 20 years, I've seen his heart growing so much. So now his body had to grow to accommodate the greater heart. So that's a nice way to justify his obesity. And he was not being diplomatic, for sure. No, he meant it. His heart is growing. So the point the heart is growing, of course, the heart is not growing physically. It remains there, but the accommodating capacity is growing. So you become able to love more. And to love more means, I will say, not so much like, okay, yesterday I loved 3, tomorrow I love 4, tomorrow I love 5. But it means I get closer to see everyone as Atma, basically. I get closer and closer to the realization of getting to see everyone as Atma. When I reach that, everyone becomes lovable, because Sukadev Goswami says in the Bhagavatam, only the Atma is the object of love in this world. And generally, the point he makes there is only the Atma is the object of love. So when you say you love someone in the conditioned state, basically you mean you love yourself through that person. But when you awoke, you will love everyone as Atma, because you cannot love anything apart from the Atma. Only the Atma can love, and only the Atma can be loved. Other things are fall objects of affection. So as much as we awake to that reality, I mean, if you are fully awakened to that reality, whatever Atma comes in your way, you will love him. You will be loving that. So it's a matter of gradually increasing basically our Krishna consciousness. But of course, as it was also said, at the same time, we have to acknowledge our smallness and our humanity and our conditions and limits. But just to become more humble and pray more intensely to increase our capacity to love, not to find an excuse to limit my love circle to the ones that I find more easy to love, basically. No, oh yeah, with this I hang on nicely. So these are the ones I love. And what about them? No, I don't love them. So the challenge is, as we quote the other day, what did Jesus Christ say? Love your enemy. That's real PhD in love. If I say to you, love your friend, I mean, it's a joke. I mean, it's your friend. You already love him. Say you love your enemy means, oh my God, he has to stop being my enemy so I can love him. I mean, there has to be no enemies. So that's why the devotees describe it Nirbhairam. Nirbhairam means he who has no enemies. He who loves equally everyone. He who sees everyone in connection to the object of love. That's another way of saying to love everyone. To love everyone means you see everyone in connection to the universal object of love that all of us have, and you try to further that connection. Of course, because you won't have I don't know, a romantic relationship with every jiva of the planet or something like that. So you have to understand which type of love. Thank you so much. I'll decorate myself a bit here. So that's the point. I mean, what does it mean to love everyone? It means to connect with everyone in connection to the common universal object of love that all of us have, basically, which is Krishna. Again, Krishna in the center, and we love everyone. Even those who we don't know. I mean, we don't know so many living entities, but if you are fully situated in that insight, you are loving everyone, basically. But yeah, it's a gradual process. We should not go neurotic because we are not yet there. We cannot do that. But it's nice to have a healthy struggle to expand our loving circle. And I would say especially we should work with those that we feel we find the most difficult to love. Those who are the most difficult, again, love your enemy. Again, there are no enemies, strictly speaking. But if you feel something with that and that, actually those personalities are representing something that is challenging in your own limitation. It's not the person outside in itself. That person is embodying something that is a particular good obstacle that you need to overcome for you to develop a wider range of affection. So you should try, especially in those cases, not the cases that are easier to love. I mean, that's like, with all respect, mediocrity. I mean, I love the ones who are really cool and nice, and I mean, okay, great. We have to begin somewhere, but the PhD will go. Krishna says what in the Gita? Vandurat matmanastasya nyenatma batmanajitaha anatmanastu satrite vartitat bhaima satruva. He's what he said, mind control, best friend. Mind uncontrolled, worst enemy. And we will say, okay, for me it's the worst enemy. So Krishna said, no, now make your worst enemy your best friend. Again, the same point. Oh my God. He's not saying make your middle friend your best friend. He say make your worst enemy your best friend. And which is your worst enemy? Your mind. There are no any other enemies outside. So whenever your mind is your best friend, you will realize, oh, everyone is my friend. Everyone, I can love everyone. So, gradually, day by day, increasing our friendly stance toward reality. But yes, we should start with the most immediate thing. Of course, if you are not even able to be loving and friendly with the persons under your care or whatever, I mean, you cannot speak about having universal love or something like that. What we were speaking the other day with, I think with Subal, okay, we're having some community ornamentation here. That's a good one. That's becoming part of the standard for every program we will have in the flute song. Everyone has to end up being decorated here. Let me show that for the ones connected. So I'm not the only one freaking out with the flower in my ear.
You're over there, your friend.
More from me. Wow.
For all your friends.
For them. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks very much. I was being selfish. Thank you so much. You share me the bigger picture. You can see I have to walk my talk. So this, it's nice. How do you know that I have 4 people here? You give me 4 flowers. I have 4.
You just knew.
So each one of these flowers is for the 4 ones connected into Zoom. And well, there are some others in Facebook, so you take all this for you as well. So
And don't we, there's some kind of misconception that love is a feeling rather than a verb. Just like taking care of children, there's a lot of financial and discipline and education, and it's not just a feeling of warm and fuzzy.
yeah. No, it's commitment, it's responsibility, and it's a verb, as you say, it's an active component to it, to the point that it can absorb your whole being. No? But yeah, I like to speak about love and affection in terms of commitment and responsibility, because sometimes just the opposite of that is expressed in terms of love, just selfish enjoyment and whatever, immediacy regarding I want this now. That's what the word asura refers to. Asura, Ra means ramante, enjoy, and asu means right now. So asura means I want to enjoy now. I don't care about anything. I want to enjoy. That's asura. Sometimes that's what is presented in the name of love in this world. So, yeah. Responsibility, commitment. Yeah. Yeah, love is the goal again. I mean, we speak on some levels. We have to love the people, but strictly speaking, if we go to what it means love strictly for us, that's prayojan. So it's not there yet. It's to be gradually invoked, and we are preparing the ground as sadhakas for. I mean, love is such an intense thing. I mean, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says it's so intense that even in this body you cannot tolerate the intensity of it. You can just reach the very initial level of prem you can develop in this body. Then you need another body to contain what the emotional implications of love. That's another thing. You need to be born from the womb of a Brajavasi in the Prakat Lila, wherever Krishna is performing his pastimes on earth, and receive bhakti samskar from the womb. Imagine. So from the womb, you start to be prepared to what it means to develop your prem. So it's so intense. So we should not downgrade our goal because it's so much. But we have to begin somewhere for sure. Here. Okay. Something else? Any other question?
Yeah.
Amal.
Just related to what you were just speaking about, what does it look like? Someone who has attained this love, does it look like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
Which love?
This love everyone. This stage.
I mean, there are different degrees. So I can say love everyone doesn't mean to have prem bhakti also. That's a different. I mean, depending on what we understand with love, again, there are different ideas. We can speak about, I don't know, Krishna says in the Gita, Pandita Samadarshina, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hashtini Sunichai Vasabhag. The sage, which is endowed with humility and knowledge, will see equally the cow, the elephant, the dog eater, the Brahmin. It's a type of seeing everyone equally, loving universal love and compassion, but not necessarily that's prem bhakti. That's different. Someone in Santarasa has universal compassion. He's seeing everything equally. He's in peace. She's in peace. but not necessarily that speaks of Prem Bhakti. Oh my God. But if we speak about Prem Bhakti, how will that be seen? Well, Vaishnava Kriya Mudra Vijnana Bhuyaha. You never know. I mean, it's difficult to ascertain that. I mean, the very idea of love is so elusive, you say. It's not easy to, it's not like, okay, tell me what's love like, so whenever I meet someone, I know that's Prem. Strictly speaking, to recognize someone who has Prem, you have to have Prem. Because Prem means madness. So you have to be mad like that person to understand, oh, he's mad like me. So Vaishnava Kriya Mudra Vijnana Bhuyaha says, I mean, yeah, it's difficult to ascertain the movements of the Vaishnava. You know when, I don't know, when, who was, like, what's his name? Who was sent to, who was sent to Ramananda Roy, who was with the Devotees? Pradyumna Mishra, thank you, yeah. So he was sent, and he saw Ramananda Roy like absorbed in Gopi Bhava, but touching the bodies of the young ladies in Jagannath Puri, of the Devotees, so they performed for Jagannath. And he was showing them, he was absorbed in Gopi Bhava. I mean, she, he is in Gopi Bhava, Visakha Saki. So, but for Pradyumna Mishra was like, what's this? I mean, he was told, someone told me he's a great Vaishnava and he's touching young ladies. So again, of course, this is not an excuse that, okay, and I'm in Prem, whatever. No? Or similarly, some famous example of Gadadhar Pandit going to Pundarik Vidyanidhi. He's a Vaishnava, he's on a sofa, smoking a pipe, opulent dress. No way. So the point is, these stories are showing not always it's easy. It's not that this is the Prem Bhakta. If this is here, that will, because Prem is the Rahasya, is the topmost secret. So it's not something like for public consumption that everyone, oh, that's it. There goes a Prem Bhakta there goes another one. I mean, you have to really be aligned with that. No? Of course, if you see someone like Mahaprabhu, of course, you won't see anyone like Mahaprabhu. That's the point. Nobody exhibited what Mahaprabhu exhibited. That's over and over stated in the scripture. What he exhibited was nowhere anybody shown there. But an extension of that experience comes to us for sure. But again, that may take form externally or not. We read in the scripture, for example, Bhava Bhakti. The symptoms of Bhava Bhakti sometimes are described: tears and trembling and blah, 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 blah. But it is said one can learn all those things in a theater or school. I can learn to cry. If you go to a theater, I know people who, if you say cry, you start to cry. I say, oh my God. Whenever we have some devotional theater, I will contact you for doing the Sahaja. Sahaja character, Prakrita the easy crying guy. So Bhava Bhakta, I mean, you can have the symptoms of Bhava Bhakti while not being a Bhava Bhakta, and Krishna may give you just like a trailer of that. That's one thing. So someone may be crying like a Bhava Bhakta, but it's a sadhaka receiving a trailer of Bhava Bhakti. A Sahaja may be imitating that by way of theater learning. Or a Bhava Bhakta, maybe in his humility, her humility, containing those symptoms in his inner core and not showing them. So the point is, you have no way to really establish. So who is the Bhava Bhakta? So Rupa Goswami will say, another symptoms are those. And this is extreme tolerance, abhyarta kalatvam, virakti, attachment from holy name, extreme detachment, but on a daily basis. It's not that something you see 4 minutes, he's a Bhava Bhakta. You may need to observe that person day after day and realize, oh my God, that's not a weekend show. He's not showing that only going to the temple on the Sunday program. It's like he's there. That's Bhava Bhakta, something like that. And so I will say we should try to not to be so like attentive or neurotic, like I want to see the symptoms. He may be Prem Bhakta or Bhava Bhakta, but we have some general idea of which are the symptoms that should be exhibited by a devotee. So we should get closer to those who are showing that on a, again, ongoing, sustainable basis and healthy way also, natural way, and gradually that will be some sort of, how do you say, osmosis, no? We will become part of that as well. But yeah, we have to become mad basically in order to understand a mad person. I mean, two mad people will understand each other. They will be happy speaking. So to understand the Prema Bhakta, what I read at the end of the article, Mahaprabhu said to Ramananda, I'm a madman. I don't know what I said. So we say, oh, bless me with that, something of that. So, yeah. Okay. So I think we have already discussed quite a while, so we can finish here and continue sharing from other perspectives. So thank you very much for your invitation. A pleasure to share with you. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srimad Mahaprabhu ki jai, Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhaktalinda ki jai, Gaur Preman. Jai Vancha Kalpataru Vyasa Kripa Sindhu Vyeva Chapati Dhanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.